On November 23, 1944, a B-17 Flying Fortress touched down perfectly at an RAF airfield in Belgium. The landing gear deployed on time. The flaps adjusted smoothly. The wheels kissed the runway without a single bounce. When the ground crew ran to greet the returning bomber, they found the cockpit empty. No pilot, no crew, no one at all. The plane was called Bad Penny. It belonged to the 91st Bomb Group, stationed out of Bassingbourn, England. That morning, it had taken off with 9 other B-17s on a bombing run to Mersburg, Germany, one of the most heavily defended targets in the Reich. Oil refineries surrounded by flak batteries that could turn the sky black with exploding shells. The kind of mission where you kissed your cross, checked your parachute twice, and tried not to think about the empty bunks waiting back at base. Bad Penny's crew was experienced. Pilot John Crisp had 22 missions under his belt. His co-pilot, Harold DeBolt, was calm under fire, the kind of man who could fly through hell and crack jokes about it afterward. The rest of the crew were solid. Bombardier, navigator, radio operator. 5 gunners watching every angle of the sky. They'd flown together for 6 months, long enough to trust each other, long enough to feel like family. The mission started rough. German fighters hit them over the Belgian border, Messerschmitts diving out of the sun, guns blazing. The formation tightened. Bad Penny took hits to the right wing, nothing critical, nothing that would stop them. They pushed on toward the target. The flak started 20 miles out, black puffs of smoke erupting around them like deadly flowers. The plane shook with each near miss. Shrapnel pinged against the fuselage. Someone shouted over the intercom, then static. Witnesses from other bombers in the formation saw Bad Penny take a direct hit to the nose section. The plexiglass bombardier position shattered. Smoke poured from the forward fuselage. The plane dropped out of formation, nose tilting down. Everyone thought they were done. Pilots were already marking the loss in their minds. Another crew gone, another 9 names for the casualty lists. But Bad Penny didn't fall. The nose came back up. The plane leveled off. It fell behind the formation but kept flying, steady, controlled, like nothing had happened. The other crews watched it disappear into the clouds below. Some swore they saw parachutes. Others saw nothing. In the chaos of combat, it was hard to tell. The bomber group completed their mission and turned for home. They'd lost 3 planes over the target. Bad Penny wasn't listed among them because no one saw it explode. No one saw it crash. It had just vanished into the weather, missing in action. Probably went down somewhere over Belgium or Germany. Recovery teams would look for the wreckage, notify the families. Standard procedure in a war where men disappeared every day. 6 hours later, Bad Penny appeared in the skies over Belgium. A radar operator picked it up first. A lone aircraft flying at 2,000 feet, heading west. No radio contact, no transponder code. He scrambled a pair of Spitfires to intercept. The fighter pilots pulled alongside the B-17 and looked into the cockpit. Empty. Both seats vacant. No one at the controls. The Spitfire leader radioed back. The RAF officer receiving the message thought it was a joke. It had to be a joke. Planes don't fly themselves. But Bad Penny kept flying, straight and level. The Spitfires escorted it toward the nearest Allied airfield, a small RAF base near Kortenberg. The tower cleared the runway. Emergency crews stood by. Everyone waited to see what would happen. Would it crash? Would it circle until it ran out of fuel? No one knew. The B-17 approached the airfield at the perfect altitude. The landing gear came down with a mechanical groan. 3 green lights on the instrument panel that no one was there to see. The flaps extended. The plane lined up with the runway, not perfectly, but close enough. The Spitfire pilots watched in disbelief. Bad Penny descended. The wheels touched down, once, twice, a small bounce but nothing serious. The plane rolled down the runway, slowing gradually, no brakes, just the natural drag of the wheels and the air. It rolled for 2,000 feet before drifting off into the grass and coming to a gentle stop. The engines were still running, the propeller still turning, and inside there was no one. Ground crew surrounded the aircraft. An RAF officer climbed up to the cockpit hatch and pulled it open. The smell hit him first, cordite and blood, and something burned. The cockpit was a mess. Shattered instruments, bullet holes stitched across the panel. Blood spattered on the seats and floor. But no bodies, no crew, no one at all. He moved through the plane. The bombardier's position was destroyed, the plexiglass nose cone blown apart by the direct flak hit. Blood here too, and pieces of equipment, but no bombardier. The radio room was intact, maps spread across the table, pencils still sitting in their holder, coffee cup tipped over, the liquid dried into a dark stain. The waist gun positions showed signs of combat, shell casings on the floor, one gun still warm. The RAF officer found something in the radio room that made his blood run cold. A message, scrawled on the back of a navigation chart in shaky handwriting. It read, "We're going down, bailing out over Belgium. Crisp hit, debolt hit, autopilot engaged. God help whoever finds this." He looked at the autopilot panel. It was engaged, set to heading 270, due west, back to England. But autopilot could keep a plane level. It couldn't deploy landing gear, couldn't adjust flaps, couldn't line up with the runway and touch down smooth as silk. Someone had to be flying this plane. Someone had to land it. The search began immediately. Every compartment, every crawlspace, the bomb bay, the tail section, nothing. 10 men had taken off in Bad Penny that morning. 0 men had landed. The British couldn't explain it. The Americans couldn't explain it. The plane was intact, flyable. The engines hadn't even overheated. It was like the crew had simply vanished mid-flight. Then someone found the parachutes, all of them, still in their storage compartments, neatly packed, unused. If the crew had bailed out, they'd done it without parachutes, which meant they hadn't bailed out at all, which meant they were still on the plane when it landed. They had to be. 3 hours later, a Belgian resistance fighter radioed British intelligence. His unit had found something. 9 bodies, American air crew, scattered across a field near 15 miles from where Bad Penny had been hit. They'd clearly jumped from a plane, but their parachutes had never opened. All 9 men had fallen to their deaths. The resistance had checked their dog tags, confirmed their identities. Every single man from Bad Penny's crew, including the pilot, including the co-pilot, the men who would have had to land the plane. The RAF officer stood on the runway next to Bad Penny, reading the message from Belgium. The timeline didn't work. The crew had bailed out over Belgium at 1400 hours. Their bodies were found in a field near Liège, but Bad Penny had landed at 1630 hours. 2.5 hours later, 90 miles to the west. Someone had flown this plane for 2.5 hours after the entire crew was already dead. Someone had brought it home. Someone had landed it. He walked back to the cockpit, climbed inside, sat in the pilot's seat still sticky with blood. The control stick had a handprint on it. He looked at the print carefully, fingerprints visible in the dried blood. He called for the identification team. They dusted the print, photographed it, ran it through their records. The match came back in an hour. The fingerprints belonged to John Crisp, the pilot, who had died when he hit the ground in Belgium at 1400 hours, 2.5 hours before this plane landed.
The Army Air Force sealed the investigation within 24 hours. Bad Penny was flown back to England under armed guard. The ground crew who'd witnessed the landing were interviewed and told to keep quiet. The RAF officer who'd found the fingerprints was reassigned, and the official report stated that Bad Penny had landed itself due to a combination of autopilot function and favorable winds. Case closed. Don't ask questions. But the questions didn't stop. How does a dead man's fingerprints end up on a control stick 2 hours after he dies? How does a plane deploy landing gear by itself? How does it line up with a runway it shouldn't have been able to see? The official answers were vague, mechanical, cold. They satisfied no one who'd been there, who'd seen that empty cockpit, who'd felt the wrongness hanging in the air around that plane. Lieutenant James Mackey was assigned to fly Bad Penny back to Bassingbourn. He was a transfer pilot, moved planes from one base to another. He'd flown dozens of B-17s. They were all the same to him, just machines, metal and rivets and engines. Nothing special, nothing strange. He climbed into Bad Penny without hesitation, ran through the pre-flight checks, everything normal. He started the engines. They caught smooth. He radioed the tower for clearance. The takeoff was routine. The plane handled well despite the damage to the nose section. Mackey settled in for the short flight to England. 40 minutes, easy run. He'd be back in time for dinner. He was thinking about the meal hall when he felt it. A presence. Someone standing behind him. He turned. No one there. Just the empty cockpit. But the feeling didn't go away. It got stronger. He could feel eyes on him, watching, waiting. The temperature dropped. His breath fogged in the air. This was wrong. The heating system was working. He checked the gauge. Normal. But he was freezing. His hands were shaking on the controls. The control stick moved under his grip. Slight. Just a twitch. Mackey's heart hammered. He held the stick firm. It moved again, pushing forward. The nose dipped. He pulled back, correcting. The plane fought him. Not mechanical resistance, something else. Something deliberate. Like someone else was flying. Someone who didn't want him there. The radio crackled. Static at first. Then voices. Faint. Overlapping. He could make out words. Crisp's voice, the pilot, calling out altitude. DeBolt responded. The gunners shouting warnings about fighters. The entire crew, communicating, flying the mission. Except they were all dead. Mackey grabbed the radio, tried to transmit. The voices cut out. Silence. Then a single voice came through. Calm, clear, crisp. The pilot. You shouldn't be here. This is our plane. We're taking her home. The controls locked. Mackey pulled hard on the stick. Nothing. The pedals wouldn't move. The throttles adjusted themselves. The plane banked left. He wasn't flying anymore. He was just sitting there, a passenger in a cockpit controlled by ghosts. His training said this was impossible. His instinct said to bail out, but his parachute was in the back, and he couldn't leave the pilot's seat, couldn't move. His body wouldn't respond. The flight to Bassingbourn took 40 minutes. Mackey sat frozen in the pilot's seat the entire time. The plane flew itself, adjusted course for wind, descended at the proper rate, contacted the tower using Mackey's radio with a voice that wasn't his. The tower cleared them to land. Bad Penny touched down perfectly, rolled to a stop at the designated hard stand. The engine shut off. And just like that, Mackey could move again. He scrambled out of that plane and never looked back. When the ground crew asked him what was wrong, he couldn't speak, just shook his head and walked away. They found him an hour later in the chapel, on his knees, praying. He refused to fly Bad Penny again, refused to even look at it. They transferred him stateside 2 weeks later. Medical discharge, severe anxiety. He never talked about what happened, took the secret to his grave. Bad Penny sat on the hard stand for 3 days. No one wanted to touch it. The mechanics felt it too, that presence, that weight. Finally, a crew chief named Sam Porter decided enough was enough. It was just a plane, nothing special. He'd fix the damage and get it back in service. He worked alone, didn't want the younger guys getting spooked by rumors. He spent 6 hours working on the nose section, replacing the plexiglass, patching the holes. As the sun set, he finished the last rivet. The work was good, solid. Bad Penny was airworthy again. He climbed down
and stepped back to admire the repair. That's when he saw them. Figures, standing around the plane, 9 of them, wearing flight suits, standing at their positions, the tail gunner at the tail, the waist gunners at the waist, the pilot and co-pilot visible through the cockpit window. He blinked. The figures were gone. Just shadows, tricks at a fading light. He told himself that, but he packed his tools faster than normal, left the hard stand without looking back. The next morning, he requested a transfer, approved within a week. Bad Penny flew 16 more missions, different crews each time. No one wanted to fly it twice. They all reported the same things. Voices on the intercom that shouldn't be there. Controls moving on their own during critical moments. The feeling of being watched, guided, protected. Bad Penny never took serious damage after that day. Flak would explode all around her but somehow miss. Fighters would line up for the kill shot and their guns would jam. Other planes in the formation would go down. Bad Penny always came home. The crews started calling her the Phantom Fortress. Some thought Crisp and his men were protecting her, watching over the plane they died in. Others thought it was something darker, that the plane had been marked by death, that flying in Bad Penny meant borrowing time from ghosts. Either way, the plane developed a reputation. Lucky for some, cursed for others. The war ended. Bad Penny survived, 41 missions total, one of the few B-17s to make it through intact. The Army Air Force planned to bring her home, put her in a museum. But the night before she was scheduled to fly stateside, Bad Penny disappeared. The guards reported nothing unusual. 1 minute she was there, the next, gone. No engine sounds, no tire tracks, just an empty hard stand. Search teams found nothing. Bad Penny had vanished. Again. The official report said she was scrapped, lost in paperwork. But pilots flying over Belgium in the decades after the war sometimes reported seeing a lone B-17 in the clouds, flying west, always flying west. When they tried to make radio contact, they heard voices, American voices, calling out positions, confirming altitude, flying a mission that never ends. On November 23rd every year, air traffic controllers in Belgium pick up a radar signature, a single aircraft at 2,000 feet, heading 270, due west. By the time they scramble interceptors, it's gone, vanished like it was never there. But the signature is always the same, a B-17 Flying Fortress. Bad Penny, still trying to make it home. The crew died in 1944, but some part of them never stopped flying, never stopped fighting to bring their plane back. Crisp's fingerprints on a control stick weren't evidence of a haunting. They were evidence of devotion. A pilot's last promise kept. We're taking her home. And 70 years later, they're still trying, still flying, still fighting their way through skies that have moved on without them. Bad Penny is still out there, somewhere between the living world and whatever comes after. A ghost plane flown by ghost men who refuse to quit, who refuse to accept that the war is over, that they're gone, that their job is done. Some missions end. Some missions never do. They just fade into legend, into stories told by old pilots and dismissed by young ones, until the day those young pilots see something in the clouds, a shape that shouldn't be there, a plane that died 80 years ago, still flying west, always flying west, heading home.